Okay. Is there, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody will probably see a little thing that they have to agree to
Yeah.
record. If you could press that, that would be great. And Maya, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Maya Townsend. I am calling in from Massachusetts, where it's gorgeous today. And I had the extreme pleasure of connecting with Stephanie many years ago now, and I was living in Austin. And my background is more in organization network analysis, but we have been embarking on social system mapping. Very happy to be part of the Master Mappers group and to also help share some of the fantastic work that Stephanie and LaDonna are doing down in, and Bill are doing down in Wimberley, Texas.
Great, thank you. Excellent. Well, we have quite a large group today. And what we'd like to do is have you do some introductions, but instead of into the whole room, we're going to have you go into introductions in groups of 3. So at least you get to know 2 other people that have joined us today. And what we'd like you to do in those introductions, I'm going to stop the share for a minute and just give you an outline of what we'd like you to do, is to share your name and the organization or network or networks that you're part of, where you're physically located, and why you're here today. And maybe the kind of like amount of experience that you have in social system mapping, and it can be anywhere from 0 to quite a bit. So what we're going to do is have you go into those groups of 3, and we're going to give you 2 minutes per person. So Bradford, who's our technical facilitator, is going to help with that. He'll send a little message into your groups to tell you when you have only 1 minute left, but otherwise you'll kind of need to self-manage that and just do 2 minutes per person. So he's going to put us into groups of 3, and you're going to see us pop into those groups of 3 where we'd like you to do those introductions. And we are going to hopefully put those questions into the chat box. Here they are from Christine. We're going to have you go ahead and get into those groups of 3 and do your introductions. And then after 6 minutes, we'll see you all back here.
And they all come running back in.
Yep. It's like they're tumbling down the hill.
Right.
Few more. Tim, Lisa, Maya, and Bill. Lost Tim? Lost
Yep.
Lisa.
They're on their way back out. They still got another 20 seconds. I think they're holding out to the very end.
Okay. Okay. So Michelle, we can't hear you if you're talking to us. I can't tell if Michelle's talking to us or not. And
There's everybody.
okay.
Hello, we're back. I hope your introductions were interesting and that you got a chance a little bit to know at least 2 other people on this call. I think we're going to ask Bradford to mute everybody because there's probably an echo since there's so many people on the call. So we'll have him mute you as we go into the
Yep. As I mute her.
Oh, and now I'm back. That's hilarious. So I'm just going to share my slides again here so you can see what the 2 sessions are in case you joined us later. We are going to have a session on the Wimberley Valley Network map, and this is an area in Texas, southwest of Austin. Presentation on that map. And then also Tim Hansen is available today. He is a technical guru on sumApp, and so if some of you are joining because you have some burning questions related to that you would like to talk to Tim, you can do that. And so we're going to have 2 different breakout sessions, one with Tim and one with our guest presenters. And the way we're going to do this is we'd like to have you indicate which session you want to go into. And you're going to do that by going to the top right hand of your box and renaming yourself. So if you would like to go and talk to Tim now in our breakout time, you're going to click on those top 3 right hand buttons. and you're going to put Tim in before your name. If you would like to go to Stephanie's presentation on the Wimberley Valley and the rest of her group, you can put Stephanie before your name, or you can just keep your name as is because you will stay in the main room. Am I getting this right, Bradford and Christine? Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing my slide just for 1 minute to see how people are doing here and indicating where you'd like to go. So if you'd like to go talk to Tim on technical items, that is the most important. You folks are the most important to change your name because we need to do that to be able to put you into that Zoom room. And so you're gonna go up to the top right-hand corner of your screen and click on the 3 buttons and rename your name with Tim in the front and then your name. If you would like to go to Stephanie's presentation, you can just keep the way you are, or you can write Stephanie before your name. Christine, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, Tim can also answer questions about Kumu, about social system mapping in Kumu as well.
Oh, and Kumu. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. All right. And so I think we have one person that wants to go talk to Tim, and everybody else it looks like is going to stay in this main room and hear the presentation from Stephanie.
And if in the middle of the presentation you want to go into the room with Tim, put Tim in front of your name and just like ping Bradford or the whole group in the chat and say, I want to move.
Yeah, and actually that reminds me, there's actually a couple people now that want to go to Tim's room. This is very open. So it's those of you who know the law of 2 feet, we're doing that in the Zoom way, right? So if you feel like you want to go check out what they're talking about in Tim's and then leave and come back and see what's happening in the presentation on the Wimberley Valley Network map, feel free to move back and forth. You can always ping Bradford and he'll help you get back and forth. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So Bradford, you can send those people over to Tim in a separate breakout room, and the rest of us will stay here and hear the presentation from Stephanie.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you. Oh,
Bradford, Tim has to go into that room also.
This is a good point, right?
Excellent.
I can still see him.
That's great.
They're in there going, are you Tim? Are you Tim?
Right? Tim renamed himself, so I got to read through the list of.
Oh, that's right. Tim should just put Tim.
There we go. Okay. Bye, Tim.
Okay. Got him?
Okay.
Great. Okay, and we'll give a 5-minute warning. That would be fine for the time. And we're going to turn it over to you. Stephanie, if you want to start or however you're going to do this.
Right. Let me pull up the slides here. So Maya's question to me always has been, so why are you interested in the network? And my interest goes back to my concern about communities and who we are as a people, going back even to like Barbara Jordan's days here in Texas. And from a Native American perspective, community is not a noun, it's a verb. In the community, you weave community by sharing wisdom and responsibility. And what the sumApp does is it lets technology help us do that literally by making the invisible visible so that we can find each other. And so the Wimberley Valley is a very unique place in that we have wonderful nature, we have the most educated people in Texas. So how do we translate that into working more effectively on shaping our future and the things that we want to do? And so the whole notion was Wimberley Valley works. Rather than staying stuck in the politics of the conversations that every community is struggling with, the notion is to each person identify what they care about, connect with people who'd be able to help them do it to create something new. So all the questions that Maya's going to go through that we connected, let people find who's an artist who might help me, what part of the valley do they live in. So it's all about sparking the conversations for good And the reason we're doing this is to create a foundation so that the community can take ownership for the triple bottom line. So that's really our focus. And so I'm going to turn it over to Maya. I'm going to stop share.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. And what I would like to raise here, just before I start showing the images, is Stephanie and Bill and LaDonna's really unique perspective at building community, of really getting in there and forming connections. More than anyone I know, Stephanie in particular really understands the value of connection and what connection can do in order to mobilize a community and make change happen. So where we started with all this work, or the first visible starting with the work, was on January 20th of last year, when we brought a group together of about 35 people to talk about the networks and the importance of networks, the importance of connection, the importance of community in the Wimberley Valley. And what we did during that session was actually a live mapping experience. So we had about 35 people in the room, and at the beginning of the session, we had nothing. We had a list of names and emails. And we started off by talking about what does a healthy network look like, and how healthy is Wimberley's network? What's working about Wimberley's networks? What isn't working about Wimberley's networks? And then what we did is we sent an email invitation to everyone in the room. And during a break, they went into sumApp and filled in their information. And so by the end, we had populated the map, which I'm going to show you right now. And what is so lovely about this particular technique is that once we did this and we got the map, then we were able to help people make meaning of it right then and there. And we helped them navigate. They had brought their laptops and started to see how they could use this map to make connections. So I'm not sure how many of you are new to social system mapping. So I'll just give a very, very brief overview of how we set this up, and then I'll show you a few specific images that we found to be helpful. And Stephanie, LaDonna, Bill, stop me anytime. So what we did here is we set up on the left-hand side the welcome pane with what the goal is, and telling people a few of the things that they can do. So if they need a refresher, here's how you can use the map. Then, of course, in the middle, we have the map itself. And I'm going to hide the left-hand pane so I can show you the map itself. And we decided that there were 5 groupings that were important. So we wanted, up here at the top, you'll see there's an affiliation drop-down. And Wimberley might have the highest number of organizations and associations per capita of any town I've ever been in, because they've got so many different groups, from the Wimberley Garden Club to Institute of Cultures to Friends of Blue Hole, Emily Ann Theater. And so it was important for folks to understand how people were connected, and also to find folks of like interest. And that was also important in our interest areas. So were people interested in, for example, a gathering place for youth? Were they interested in intergenerational spaces? Were they interested in protecting the natural environment? So we asked people to share their interests, and in a moment I'll show you how we use those. We also then did something very common in sumApp, which is ask for what help do you need and what help can you offer. The idea being is that we wanted to encourage people to make these kind of exchanges, to say, you know what, I'm really good at baking goods and I really enjoy baking cookies, and if you have a fundraiser, let me know and I can donate some cookies to you or provide some catering services if you pay me. So we were trying to help people make matches in that way. And then finally, at the bottom right, you'll see we have neighborhood, because Wimberley is actually, it's a Wimberley Valley area. It's not just the incorporated town of Wimberley. So there's Rolling Oaks, there's Wood Creek. And so we asked people to say where they were in those as well, so that people could organize by neighborhood. So this is the map we ended up having. Right now, there's, I think, 99 people in it. Stephanie, is that right?
I think so. We might have 100 today.
what is that?
We hope to get 100 today.
Fantastic. All right. So 100 is coming soon.
Actually, Maria, we hit 100 yesterday.
Oh, all right. Okay, so 100 people are on this map. And some of these are unconnected. So we've got 5 isolates out here. Most of these folks are isolated partially because they didn't finish doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to hide them really quickly here, and then so that we can zoom in on the map. Okay, so there we go. This is just the people that have connections in the map. And one of the things that the group was interested in, it was thinking about who are the hubs in here? Who are the folks who are deeply, highly connected, who are making things happen in the community? Part of the idea being that these are the folks that Wimberley Valley Works really wanted to engage. Stephanie or LaDonna, maybe this would be a good time to talk about your Vision Council while I'm going ahead and getting the hub map up.
Well, we've had, fortunately, some very brilliant people to help us figure out to get to this point that we've had a vision circle. But now our idea that we'd love people's feedback on the sense-making part and showing people how to actually use it. We're thinking of asking the hubs if they would serve as the vision circle for this next sense-making part, because they are so incredibly connected. And the idea is to let people see how sumApp can work in action. So, let's call on the people who are fundraisers. Let's call on the people who are good marketers. Let's call on the people who want to organize events and say, okay, you've offered this. How about you offer it so that we can figure out the future of the network? So basically, a lot of times I personally become the networking person because I know so many people, but I'm trying to get myself out of the middle because I'm nothing but a bottleneck. So we're all trying to figure out the capacity building for the network itself. And when Maya started talking about hubs, they're the most talented, they're also the busiest. So it will be interesting to see where people land.
Okay, great. And I think I am doing this here. Let's do less than. Okay, there we go. There's our hubs. Okay, super. So here we go. Here are our hubs. And what we found upon looking at these is that there actually was not a ton of surprises in this hub group, and that these were the folks that we pretty much thought were going to be hubs, but it was a good confirmation that Wimberley Valley Works was connecting with the right people and engaging the right people. And these folks have been the ones who tend to show up, and they're the ones who are really have a stake in Wimberley, and so they have been great allies in this process. And so then the next question is, how can we use this map to help these folks do their work and do their work better? So I'm going to highlight one person right here who's Jamie Petit. I'll move her over here so you can look at her. Jamie is very deeply connected. And Jamie, oops, she just slid back out. There, Jamie is, oops. Here we go. So Jamie is the one with the long dark hair right here at the bottom right. I'm just going to hover my mouse for her. And Jamie is particularly active in environmental activities. And so I'm going to just for a moment show everybody again so you can see the entire map, and we'll find Jamie and see how we can use those interests to help her connect. So hold on just a moment. Okay. It's refreshing. All right. So when we look at interest areas up here, Jamie's active in the environment. So let's see about who else is interested in the environment.
Maya, can you just pause a minute? It's not, I can't tell if it's, like your side panel is still open in our view. There, okay. It just was taking a little while to catch
Okay.
up. to where you are.
Sorry.
I think there's a delay as
Yeah.
you're showing the map, so.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll slow down and give it a moment.
Mhm.
Now we can see your drop down of interest.
Okay. Okay, so here we go. Protecting the natural environment. So I'm choosing that as the interest group. See that? Protecting the natural environment. You see a map?
It's it hasn't filtered down yet. The drop down is still there. So I think just pause a minute.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and while we're waiting on that to drop, she was clicking, as people got into this, they got the notion of we can add interest areas. So there was always a broad environmental thing, but then people say, we want a specific category. Who wants to work on fighting the Kinder Morgan pipeline, right? So we have accommodated people's shifts in roles that they wanted to add and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So Maya, I can't tell if it's, it still looks pretty much like most of the people are on the map, but the drop down is gone. And so I
Okay.
can't, yeah.
So now you're seeing the environmental interest, interested in protecting the natural environment. And so right here in the middle is Jamie again, who is the hub and very interested in the environment. And if we hover,
There's a new faces. If you add people continuously, you can send them the new faces that have showed up. You can send reminders. So yeah, so you would just go through and send them up. And if you, all those are fake emails, so I won't do it. And then in setup, you build your survey here. So this is what you would do. There's a default survey in there, which you can alter or just get rid of everything and create one. Here is the connections. This does not have a default one. You would just bring something over here, fill it out the way you want, hit save. And you would, before you send out emails, you would define the email templates to fit exactly what you want it to say. Don't never forget to hit save. We have an opt-in form. So this is a way where you, if you don't have a list, you want people to opt in on their own. This way you know you have permission from them, or you want to put, say, an iframe with your opt-in form on it. You can create an opt-in form here, and then you would take the iframe here or just the link, and you would send that to people and they could opt in. And here's the settings. It's just welcome text. These are the email welcome text. Or, pardon me. Here, I'll show you what the welcome text does.
Tim, if I may, really quick.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just letting you know, I had a timer set on this room for 1 minute. Well, it has 1 minute left on it. Feel free to keep talking till 11:40, and then
okay.
I'll move you guys back into the main room. So don't feel like you see the countdown and it's like, oh crap. So.
Oh, okay. Alrighty. Okay. Yep.
Those were the attributes.
Right.
And then the second.
and what I'll, actually, let me add something, Seth, before you go on, is we did pre-populate, and we had a tester group. And that tester group went in and gave comments. They said, for affiliation, you need to add these organizations, or for help needed and help offered, add this. So we did that pass. And then on January 20th, when they got the larger group in, they also had additions. So this continues to evolve. And one of the nice features about sumApp is that you can send those reminders saying, there are new attributes in the survey, there's new faces in the survey, please come back in and update your information. So we have been doing that along the way.
Okay, good. Thank you. If I can ask a quick follow-up question.
Yeah, please.
So and then also then in the values for those attributes under interest areas and help needed and help offered. It sounds like what you were just saying, Maya, is that some of those were predetermined or were determined by a focus group ahead of time and then were added to over time that people came up with. So I'm kind of interested in the information value or cleanup that happens, because as I think Stephanie may have noted that people wanted more specific things, or sometimes a lot of those values overlap, and so if you're not dealing with a fixed list that people choose from, then you have the value of being able to have people be independent and have agency in determining what those values are. But then you also have the issue of people creating values that overlap with others, or not considering some values that they might have otherwise considered because they were introduced after they did their main thinking about stuff. You know what I mean? It kind of like gets to it gets hard to manage it as a controlled vocabulary.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense, Seth. And what we did is we did manage it and we curated it. So we did not allow people to add in their own values into sumApp. What they did is they would write it on a piece of paper and suggest it or send it to us by email. And then what we would do is either say, yeah, absolutely, we missed this, and then we would add it. Or what we would do is say, we intended that to be part of this existing value. We need to rewrite it. And if we got the feedback before the January 20th, then that was easy to do. After January 20th, then we did run into the issue of not everyone went back in and updated. So this is one of those imperfect aspects of the process.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sure. Stephanie, LaDonna, anything you want to add on that?
LaDonna, you handle that. You want to chime in?
Probably the one thing that I wish sumApp did that it doesn't is automatically alphabetize those lists. Because I go back in, we had a recent one, I added a few new ones in, and I have to reorder the whole thing or just put them at the bottom. So I put them at the bottom because I don't have enough skill to reorder, unless there's some secret that I don't know, which would be wonderful to learn. That was an issue for us. But yeah, there's that whole notion of adding in what people ask for. And we're surprised and delighted that we're actually being asked to add things.
Stephanie, LaDonna, that is on our roadmap. It's kind of a big technical can of worms given the underlying survey library. But we do know that's one of the higher technical cans of worms that we intend to get at. So yeah.
Thank you for opening that can of worms.
That's funny. Yeah. So I'm going to jump in here because I'm looking at the time, and we're welcoming back the people who were in with Tim, and we're back now all into the main room. And perhaps if Maya, if you don't mind, just stopping sharing for a minute so we can all a little bit more easily see everybody. And we're going to go into the question and answer session now. And again, we're going to do this in the 2 separate breakout rooms. So we can continue with those of you who might want to continue with some questions and answers with Tim. You can keep Tim by your name as you rename yourself in the Zoom box. And if you would like to continue with question and answers around the Wimberley Valley network map, if you could put Stephanie in front of your name, or just keep your name as it is and you'll stay in this room. And we're going to do questions and answers for about approximately another 10 minutes, 10 to 11 minutes.
And Lisa, can I just say so in this room, it will be me facilitating discussions around the questions that people put into the registration form when they signed up. So if you put a question into the registration form, we will do our best to address it. Unless it's a technical question that you put in the registration form, then go off with Tim because he's going to be the guy anyway. And then all the other ones will sort of facilitate a discussion around. So if you had a burning question in the registration form that's not technical, stick around. Otherwise, Stephanie or Tim are your
Okay, so there's 3 options. I'm sorry about that. There's 3 options. If you'd like to keep talking about the Wimberley Valley map, You're going to put Stephanie in front of your name, and you will be put into that breakout room. If you would like to have your questions answered that you sent in ahead of time by Christine, you're going to stay in this room. And if you have technical questions, put Tim in front of your name. So there's 3 options. Don't do anything if you want to stay with Christine Capra. Put Stephanie in front of your name if you're going to the Wimberley Valley map, and put Tim in front of your name if you have technical questions. And again, to remind you how to put that in front of your name is that you're going to scroll on your Zoom screen, and you'll see 3 buttons in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and you do rename, and you put those names in first before your name. And then it helps the Zoom breakout rooms put you into the right rooms. Any questions? Always can use chat for that. I think we got that. Everybody's got this down.
I think Michelle has a question.
Oh, Michelle, do you have a question?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
The chat button. I'm sorry, I'm new to this.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so I'm curious about in the Wimberley network, are you posting that on a web page?
You know what? If you want to talk about Wimberley, I think maybe you can go to that one.
Oh,
well,
where am I now?
You're in the main one. So I'm going to, maybe I can rename you and put you into Stephanie's, and then you'll be able to answer that. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
And Bradford, you should put Stephanie into Stephanie's room also.
Yeah, no, I'm getting around to that.
Okay, okay.
There we go. Stephanie should be joining. Christine, oh, that's you. Oh, Sherry.
I think everybody's going back to Stephanie except for David.
Yeah, and Sherry Holtz wants to come back to you. I got to jump in and grab her out.
And you'll have to, and Michelle, if you can get her over into Stephanie's room.
Yep, really quickly here. There you go, Michelle. You should see a pop-up.
Master job, Bradford.
Oh, I'm working on it. I'm totally pulling us out of here. Let me jump in and grab Sherry really quick.
It is kind of an issue. We, like every other community, have these people on Facebook who are not people you'd really want in the conversation. And so when we preloaded this, we knew all the people that were asking to come and all that kind of stuff. And then later, it's really been a word of mouth. Oh, if you have a friend who wants to join, let us know about them, and LaDonna will send them an email. And so now that we're getting a broader audience, and see what you think of our approach, it is to say you could do it yourself, and to say, and we'll be welcoming you with a phone call, right? As soon as you join the network, to be able to actually talk to the people. So we are very clear that we want this to remain a safe place and not be taken over by the usual harangue that's happening on Facebook.
If I may, Stephanie.
In the piece I'll add.
Oops, sorry. Sherry, if you wanted to jump back to the main room, I saw you had Christine in your name. If you want to jump back to the main room, just hit leave breakout room, and that will throw you right back to the main one. I apologize for that.
Thank you. No, I first put Stephanie. Thank you.
No problem.
So the piece I would add to that is
which has to do with how people find each other, communication peer-to-peer, an additional comm system and/or facilitation. What is the importance and role of network weavers, and what skills do they need in the mapping environment? And then how do you build a system and not just a map? And then he's puts in parentheses, maybe for another time. So yes, this is a big set of questions. And so the quick thing here, and I'll just say this very quickly, and then I want to ask Lisa also to share her thoughts, and it would be great if Stephanie and I were part of this discussion as well. But I think the thing that I keep coming to more and more is, people have been asking us for a messaging component for a long time, and I'm not inclined to go there for a whole lot of reasons. One of which is just because that's a ton of data, and that's a very complex thing, and there are tools out there for communications, and us trying to build that is just beyond our capacity. I mean, like there are shorter term, bigger constraints in data gathering that I'm trying to break before we think about a messaging system. So my first response to that was just technical, like, that's too big. But as I think about it more and more, I've also come to think that I think even having a messaging system, I think the deeper question is about teaching people how to actually read the map. And Bradford, I think Stephanie is talking in the other room and her video isn't there. Or have you tried to?
She's in both places at the same time. So we see her and she's talking. However, I can request that she stop her video.
Well, I'll just try not to be distracted. But
so she's actually able to talk in that other room. Is that what's happening?
Yeah. So she has 2 devices on right now, and she's in both places. Okay. She's pulling one of those wormhole things.
Yeah. Well, I think you can actually delete one of her devices as a.
Well, she won't be engaged. But
okay.
Yeah. Let's just not worry about it.
Okay. Keep going.
So. But David, I think the bigger question, and this is why, like in the last year, I've been focusing so much on how do we do sense making, because I've become really convinced that people don't, like, no matter what tool you give them, they won't engage and they won't use it regardless of how easy. Like, we can make the technology, like totally falling off a log, but it's the psychological understanding of what does this mean and how does it fit for me and what agency do I have? And how do I read it? Like, how do I actually read it and sense make with it? I'm finding is just to be like, that's what actually motivates. That's what actually brings people to start to take action. And that is a process of not only showing them stuff, but asking them. It's a bigger process. And I've sort of been starting to learn more about that, but I'm feeling like I'm talking too much. So Lisa, do you have stuff you would like to say about that?
I would like to hear more, David, just your experience so far and what you've tried, because it seems like you've had some good experience with this, and maybe we can, and we still have a little bit of time. So if there's something that is spurring the question or something that you've tried.
Sure. Where it's coming from is, I mean, I worked with Drew Mackey a lot, for many years, and Drew is the lead person who I think some of you know. On this, and a great evangelist for network mapping. And we've been doing some work in London on how to make London a more networked city. And that eventually led to 4 equalities networks, LGBT, deaf and disabled, refugee council and so on, coming together to get quite a big grant, £200,000 from Big Lottery, to work for 2 years on mapping their 4 networks. And the project description says that what we're about is co-designing a system, not a map, co-designing a system of digital tools in order to enable those networks and network members to campaign, collaborate, build solidarity, et cetera, with the map as the core component of that. And the aim is to work with grassroots groups. They're not technologically very sophisticated. They will all have their different preferences for communicating and so on. The networks themselves are not very well staffed or whatever. So it's a huge jump, basically. And what I'm discussing with Drew and others is, are we developing a map and then getting people to hook into the map and understand the map and add some tools onto it or whatever? Or are we standing back and designing a collaboration system of tools, of which the map is one, and then what are the facilitation and so forth issues in that? So it's like, do you approach this from the big question of how do you do system design for collaboration? Or do you start at it from the small thing of let's get a map going, and then find out, do people like using email or WhatsApp or this or whatever and so forth? Because, yeah, sure as hell, you won't get them onto a new system.
Yeah.
But if the objective is to do peer-to-peer networking, is that too ambitious? Or you really have to look at enabling, as far as possible, the network managers and the existing kind of connectors within the networks to build onto their existing facilitation and network building some uses of the map. Okay, the answer to that is kind of, do you try it and then iterate? Or the other thing is we do quite a lot of games and simulations, so we're looking at kind of paper prototyping process of people actually running a game, if you like, to kind of play through that. So I don't know. I just wondered if anybody else is facing the same issues.
I in a very micro way with a map I'm doing across the lower Mekong in Southeast Asia. A similar question comes up from people is like, and I think it comes from, is this map only useful if it can actually share, like it all of a sudden becomes this thing that has to have everything in it, right? Like documents or shared things that they can go and research and ways to communicate. And what we've been doing is stepping back and saying, first, we just have to get people, like Christine was saying, familiar with the map and using that. But we are just very small asking that question compared to the size you are. And so I think it'd be interesting to figure out like how to connect with others who have done the scale you're doing. But I think it's a very common question about how to think about that in a way that doesn't involve just all of a sudden making it this huge thing that then no one wants, like you're trying to get people to do and they won't do. And so, I don't really have a quick answer for you in a short minute, but I would be curious about just like I think you've identified the main question and like who else is working on that main question.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just helpful to know that it's a useful question to ask.
I know it's coming up. It comes to me. I see it a little bit as a sign as they don't see the power of the social system map yet, or we haven't figured out how to help them connect through that versus they're trying to add a bunch of stuff to it.
Yeah. And I've been in the middle of these discussions for a long time and am thinking about ways of convening around just those questions. So I do have some ideas so stay tuned. We're going to continue this and further this discussion just on this particular focus. Yeah,
and it looks like some people have joined us and we're hearing the tail end of that.
Yes.
So looking at time, do we want to recap that, Christine, or should we move on?
Let's move on.
Okay. Yeah. All of you, welcome back. We have just 5 minutes left. Thanks for working with our process here. And we are back in this last 5 minutes. We want to do a reflection on just this hour and to see what your thoughts are and really to ask your questions right now about what you have learned about social system mapping, what surprised you and what you're most excited about related to social system mapping. You will also have an opportunity to give us feedback on the process of this hour in an email that Christine sends you afterwards. But right now we're just wanting to do some reflection as a way to kind of wrap up for the hour on actual focus on social system mapping. So we're going to put those questions, I'm hoping Christine can do that in the chat box for everybody. What have you learned? What surprised you? What surprised you? What are you excited about? And then if you could start by putting it in the chat box to everybody. We won't be able to hear from everybody. So you can start by writing it in the chat box and we'll have a recording of that, your written recording, and get you started doing that. So let's see if Christine has put those into the chat box.
Sorry, I just put them in Brad's. I'm redoing it.
Okay. That's what happens. So what have you learned? What surprised you? What are you excited about related to social system mapping? Go ahead, pop that in the chat box. You can do that without even seeing what Christine's putting in there. You can just start writing in the chat box. You do that by scrolling over the bottom of your screen and you'll see a little chat button. You click on that and you can start typing into everyone. And just a reminder, as we get to the end of the hour, that if those of you who want to hang around for another half an hour, have some more questions you want to explore, some deeper questions, you're welcome to do that. But in the meantime, as we're wrapping up, does any of you want to put your voice into the room and just share any of your reflections you're having on social system mapping or anything that's kind of jumping out for you in this hour of looking at social system mapping? You can raise your hand if you're wanting to speak, and you'll need to unmute yourself, and you do that by scrolling over the bottom of your screen and clicking on your microphone icon.
just letting David know from one of the questions in the chat, the recording or the breakout rooms were recorded. So we will have that available for you afterwards.
Great.
Was Tim's also recorded, Bradford?
Yep, everything was, as I was jumping in and out, they were all recorded.
Okay.
So
excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to speak their voice into the room and just say what any reflections from this hour?
If you'd like me to, I can open up all the mics.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Yeah.
So no one talk. No.
I just learned how sophisticated and how inspiring and sophisticated the Wimberley Valley map is, and Maya and Stephanie and that whole team's vision of how to use it is, which was exciting to see.
And I liked the example in that map of adding how the emergent iterative nature of social system mapping, and how you added the interest area around fighting the pipeline later, and showing that dynamism of this. It's not just a static map. It's something that you can keep adding and make useful for you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the folks from Wimberley for sharing that map and for being vulnerable enough to make it available for us to look at and pick apart and whatever, although we didn't have that much time to pick it apart. But it's really good to use a specific example that we can look at. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And we would love for you to find us anytime and give us your aha moments at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? We were really excited and honored to do this, not just to present, but to hear from you all, because this is not the easiest thing in the world, right? So we rely on learning with others. So we appreciate y'all being here.
So Lisa, are you still here? No.
I'm here.
Oh, how come there you are. Like everybody keeps moving around, so I keep I'm looking.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do the kind of wrap up all. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to send it over to Christine now to do some wrap up.
Yeah, so really, again, thanks so much for being here. It's really important for us to all hear from each other and learn from each other's questions, because this is totally an emerging field. There's like Tim has some technical expertise, but there are no experts. We're all learning together, so it's really valuable to have you participate in this from whatever level and a bunch of experience you have. I will send out a follow-up email after this, which has a whole lot of resources. Stephanie, I don't know if your map is public. Is it public?
No, it is not public.
Okay, so then I can't add Stephanie's to that list. But there are some public maps that you can look at that I will share with you, as well as some other videos and interesting things that you hopefully will find interesting. It also has a survey in it, so if you have feedback about the process, please feel free to give it to us in that survey. And then for those of you that need to jump off at the top of the hour, thank you so much. We will say it's not rude to jump off at this point, and feel free to move on with your day. And for those of you who would like to dig deeper into Stephanie's map, or dig deeper into technology with Tim, or just to share thoughts and conversation with me and or whomever sticks around, please feel free to stick around. And if you want to, and let's do the name thing again. Bradford, you're sticking around for a few minutes to at least get everybody resituated, correct?
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Seth.
Thanks, Seth. Just one quick thing also. Where'd you go? Here.
Thank you, Mary.
Michelle asked if there was an email that she could get a hold of somebody for technical questions.
There will be an email in the follow-up email that I'll send, so you'll get it in the follow-up.
Gotcha.
Feel free to connect to ping me. So let's do, if you want, let's do the name game again. If you want to go talk to Tim some more, please put Tim in front of your name. If you want to dig into Stephanie's map some more, please put or keep Stephanie's name in front of your name. And so it looks like people have already, that are sticking around, have their names there. So Bradford, you can go ahead and reassign people, and
Yep. Let's see, Tim. There we go. And Stephanie, obviously I got to throw you in a room. There we go.
And again, Tim needs to go into the Tim room.
This, you know, I keep forgetting this thing. I'm sorry, Tim.
And Tim needs to unmute himself.
He said it's okay.
Yeah, I saw his mouth moving.
Oh, and
Michelle.
Michelle, it shows you assigned to the. I'm going to assign you to Tim, and then I'm going to throw you back to Stephanie.
Okay, I was hoping to be in the main room.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Don't go anywhere.
Okay. You've got, I don't know if you know, Stephanie, you've got two, or Michelle, you've got two screens that we can see.
Oh, why is that?
Are you on with the phone and with your computer? Or did you log?
My phone.
No. Let me see if I stop video really quick, if it does anything.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hey, look at that. We still got you. So you're good.
Okay.
And you wanted to stay in the main room?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm going to just, that extra screen is still confusing me. So Bradford, do you want to stick around, or do you want to, well, obviously you can do whatever you want. And again,
Yeah,
the law of 2 feet. As soon as this gets boring, feel free to abandon the conversation.
I can stick around. That's no problem. Stephanie, really quick, I'm just going to remove the other screen.
Michelle.
Michelle, sorry.
Bradford, it might take away her sound, though, is my one, because I was going to do that as well, but it might take away her sound.
Let's give it a test and see what happens.
And while you're doing that, David, okay. Stephanie Michelle, can we hear you still?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Awesome.
And we can hear you. Okay, good. We took care of that. Cool. So Michelle, was there, in our last little session, David was talking about just sort of like, how do we get more, like, what do we do? So so did you have a specific thing you wanted to talk about, or should we go back to what we were discussing with David?
Go back to what you were discussing. I mean,
okay.
I have things that I want to ask about, but maybe email will be better.
Okay. So David, and here's Stephanie. And Stephanie's been doing this.
I guess, can you hear me okay? I just changed, sorry, I just changed from AirPods. I guess behind my question is how to set realistic expectations of what a system map can actually do for people. Just to recap, we're working with 4 networks, equalities networks, grassroots groups, with a high expectation from a funder that we're pioneering how to use network mapping and other tools to create a digital system for collaboration, network building, campaigning, building solidarity, etc., etc. So, wow, fantastic to have this opportunity, but it's like, are we diving off a cliff here? And we have some internal debates in the team about this. And I guess my skeptical but hopeful position is that most of you may be able to get all the grassroots group onto the map and adding in some data and so on and so forth, and maybe putting in their email addresses and so forth. But it's going to be very difficult for them to establish peer-to-peer communication between them, to actually get them feeling comfortable, searching for other people with interests, wants, offers, and so forth, identifying a subset of, hey, here's a dozen people across 4 networks I've never met before who are all going to get together and do something, and then actually get doing it, just doesn't seem to me realistic. On the other hand, if you've got really good network managers and facilitators and so forth in the network, and they can fire up people on the network about the potential, then they can do lots of stuff with that. But how are we actually going to get to that point? Do we say, right, well, let's start building, as you would do with software development or whatever. let's do some research, let's build a prototype, let's test it, let's evolve it, and so on and so forth. I don't think people are going to do that. You know, they're not sufficiently tech to get in and do that. It's no good building a, hey, we've built it, now you come and use it. So we need some iterative process of what I think is system development, not mapping development, but how the hell do we get the people who are our collaborators in the networks to understand system development?
Right.
Really tough.
Well,
am I asking the right questions here?
Well, exactly, because that's really where we're at. The irony is there's a native wisdom that says everything that enables disables also, and everything that disables enables also. So ironically, the people who are the best natural networkers and bumblebees in some ways are least likely to use it because they already have enough
Sure.
done. So the key lies in, like Jamie Pettit that we went through, she's an emerging leader. She never saw herself as a leader, but we've done enough face-to-face thing that she stepped up. So to be able to go back to Jamie and say, but there are also these other people that could join this group you have, I think the key is specific projects. And so like just recently this week, we got approval to build a park in honor of one of my mentors that's lived in Wimberley 30 years. So I'm going to be using it to say, okay, who wants to help me do the fundraising? Who wants to help me do the event? And when we have enough stories about how we pulled something together with it, we will. The other problem is these hubs are, you know, can be close to burnout because they're the people call for everything. And so to me, we have to have a strategy prevention-wise to both build new leaders, but also to prevent that burnout. So when somebody's already pushed to the nth degree, it's hard to get them to add a new muscle. And even for me, it's a new muscle for me. I haven't activated as much as I could because I'm busy doing the overall stuff too. But I think the key is in the projects. And when you can identify a project and maybe even have a template for exactly how you would do it, what you're looking for, and I have a couple in mind now, then people will be willing and be able to see, well, if I invest just a little bit in how to use this, then it does open up all these new doors. Because what I've discovered in communities is that nonprofits are every bit as much a hierarchy and bottleneck as corporate America. Because you go to and you say, well, would your group get involved in this? Well, that becomes a board decision, and they're already overwhelmed, so they don't even send it out to their members to say, would you like to work on this thing? But now we can say, well, I can look up the artists across the whole valley and say, who would be interested in this, and bypass the nonprofits. So it's a huge potential for member to member mining of who is here in the valley, because it would take you years to figure out the stuff that can now just be on the network. But you've hit the hard point, that sense making, and is it worth it to me? Because I'm a person who carped about email, and I am not naturally drawn to technology, but once I figure out it can do something I couldn't possibly do on my own, I'm all in. It takes me. I'm not a natural at it. The intuitive stuff they put in doesn't land on me. So I think a lot of people are in that boat. But once they figure it out, it's the only way to organize to scale, I think. It really is. And we don't have enough time to make it all be face-to-face and make it be easy and personal. There just isn't time for all of that, from my point of view.
That's really helpful. And what I'm hearing is you've got to offer real value back to the people who are on the map.
Yes.
And at two levels, one to keep them in there, but you can't do the top level system network analysis and so forth unless the people kind of on the map are contributing that data and so on. So focusing around projects or whatever, really finding out what are the concerns of the people on the map. And that seems to me, a skilled network weaving facilitation, non-technology process.
Right. Capacity building on so many levels, because also helping people with their projects, right? We now have like 4 project teams, which has been time consuming too. So you're wanting to support their ability to facilitate and decision making, and how do they think about, and they're setting up their own Facebook pages and they have decisions around that. And then they get in the middle of it, and then they just, switch the scope of it. So they started with one team and then they shift into something else. So all the dynamics you would have in project teams become a reality here. Mm-hmm. So who is going to manage the projects that do emerge? So we've had things emerge, but they need tended just like a plant. So trying to turn this into a business model is what we're trying to figure out. So what we're imagining is that we're going to keep the current level we have always as free, but we want to do amped up memberships, both for members and for organizations that they would pay extra for. And that might include team facilitation. It can include content on meeting management and stuff like that. So Kelly, that was on the line here, because she knows back-end systems and AI, she's very interested in what are the things that you could add that make it even more powerful and payable, because, people like Christine and Tim are not making a fortune off of it either. So it's like we create these models and we want to get them out there, and we need to figure out how to pay for the tending that goes along with it, because technology alone doesn't weave the community. It's got to be tended and woven. But for me, have decided that projects, because if you listen to organizers, especially the ones working on diversity issues, they all say it's about common projects where you can forget your politics. And trust me, when EP was coming here to steal our water, and then Kinder Morgan wants to build this pipeline, I am shoulder to shoulder with Trump supporters and everybody else who normally, and we know we don't agree, but we agree on the pipeline, and we agree we want to keep our water. So, that has been a real unifying factor.
Right.
Yeah. That's really helpful, Stephanie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing I just add in here, that we're looking at kind of community of practice, how do you help people learn from each other and so forth. And we don't have, really that many people in the UK that are doing stuff at the level which you're doing in the US. So, and my particular responsibility is about learning materials and communication and so forth. So I'm keen to hook people as much as possible into existing systems, and maybe, we can, subject to what Christine says, we can find some ways of hooking into this community of practice or whatever. So I'm looking around at who has expertise around these many issues, the facilitation issues, not the technical issues, the other stuff and so forth. Yeah. And not trying to build yet another community of practice and hook people into that. But how do you help people learn how to learn, and maybe across diverse places? But that, again, that's, Harold Jarche's stuff, isn't it?
Right.
But that's tough as well.
Yeah.
It is. And by the way, Christine, I've thought of this and haven't thought to drop you a note, but Peter Block, they're all about the abundant community and what you want to teach and what you want to learn. Mm-hmm. And I've pushed my friends in that community, and they never seem to have a software for really capturing that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how they normally map that, but sumApp would be perfect for that whole process. Mm-hmm. Because the whole piece about learning is an amazing way to weave community. Mm-hmm. In Native traditions, they talked about medicine society, right? So people who knew about deer, people who knew about plants, all that kind of stuff. So we have our own version of that with things we know. Bye-bye, Michelle.
Bye-bye, Michelle.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
But I'm with you, David. It needs to be a vetted space where people feel safe and they know they can learn about it. And frankly, we started Seventh Generation Labs specifically to put all the wonderful wisdoms up in one place, in a place that's curated. So, we're still working on that process, but we've gotten kind of distracted by the stuff on the ground. Mm-hmm. But, that you could go and find out about World Cafe and open space from the very people who invented it, right? I don't want to put my spin on it, but, Juanita and David could put World Cafe or whatever. So I just feel this clock ticking about how much time do we have to really get this stuff out. Because when all is said and done, I'm very clear the federal government is not going to be recoverable in my lifetime. The state of Texas is equally horrifying, trust me. And so it's going to be at the community level. We have got to figure this out. And I'm talking circular economy and that whole thing, because nobody is, FEMA declared years ago that FEMA as we know it is over. They do not have the resources and ability to come in and do what they used to do. And so people are not really having a grip on how dire this situation is with global warming when your government really can't function.
I mean, that triggers in my mind that whether I've been thinking of, we've been in London, we've been developing the idea of London as a more networked city and promoting mapping and all that. And that appeals to some kind of people, but mostly not, if you like. And I think we kind of agree whether this is at the locality level or the network level. It's not just about the maps and the technology, it's about a whole bundle of other stuff, and you're referring to Peter Block and so on. So how do you put a wrapper around that? So I've been playing with the commons idea, where there's a whole richness of experience on that. And David Bollier has just got a new book out about that. So I'm playing with the idea of saying to people, how do we create a networked commons? How do we create a local commons? Mm-hmm. And the commons will be supported by systems mapping, but a whole lot of other experience about community building and network building and so forth. So how do we bring the different models together and make them work, rather than thinking that our intervention can be network mapping or whatever, and that will kind of fix it, because it won't.
No, because it's like Colorado Springs, where we moved here from Colorado. They have, in Colorado Springs, it's got focus on the family and all that, but they have just an amazing group called Joint Initiatives. So in Colorado Springs, the heads of social service, the health department, the police department, the justice system, the schools, United Way, those CEOs have met in conversation every month for 15 years. And they understand systems thinking. And so if you can help a family handle it, the problem doesn't spill into the schools, or if the church can. And if the schools can handle it, it doesn't fall into the police. And they co-locate staff and they integrate their services and have one-stop shopping, what they call no wrong door, about if you're needing and you're homeless and a youth, whoever you connect with can give you the whole enchilada. So at least in the social service world, there is already a model of how do we make all of us connected so that our services are spread across. So I'm always in favor of go where people are already connected in an intact group, and then give them this new tool because they already have the relationships. Mm-hmm. And so why we landed on Wimberley Valley Works is because you can substitute any city. We had people in Kyle and people in San Marcos say, well, we need a San Marcos Works, and from a Native perspective, it's not about right or wrong. It's about what works and what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, well, why not have that as a tagline, just like we work, for all the stuff. But instead of having an incubator where you're trying to scale up to get venture capital money, we want a high school student. We're working this year on intergenerational mentoring too. So this is to be a community resource where if you're retired and a NASA engineer from Houston, which we have a ton of them, they can just drop by the works and say, well, I'd be willing to meet with somebody 1 hour a week. Because now you can't go anywhere and even volunteer yourself. You can't walk into the high school and say, I'm here to volunteer. There's no system. So trying to find the models that we know, and then this becomes like an adjunct instead of just saying we're going to drag people to this technology and then say figure it out, as if people don't already have their networks, because we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
But really, you all have Brexit, so maybe this will be your anecdote, figuring out how to do the social map. So I worry about you all over there.
I know it is pretty. It's totally weird at the moment. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, this isn't really about Brexit. It's about a bunch of pretty hard right-wing conservatives who have been passionate about getting out of Europe, but we now have a bunch of people in there who are really using this to refashion the Conservative Party in a hugely destructive way, destructive of what that party, of which I'm not a member, but what that party had, but you know, it has been a fairly broad church party and so forth, of destroying a lot of what they call one nation conservatism, and being potentially hugely destructive of parliamentary democracy, our civil service, and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, we've got a really big democratic challenge here. So you then start thinking about the relationships between parliamentary democracy, direct democracy, participative democracy, and hey, we need to map the people who are doing all that different kind of stuff, you know, and begin to bring them together.
Right.
You know, so let's look at, you know, my suggestion in the groups I'm with in there is to say, please don't start yet another initiative around deeper democracy. Look at who is already doing this kind of stuff. Oh yeah, but it's so difficult to form coalitions and so on, you know. So at least one good thing about mapping is it helps people think about ecosystems.
Right, right. Yep. Well,
that's a whole other story, yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have politicians who are very up for this, because we had Trump-like people who took over our city council. So we had to get really busy and elect 3 new people that now have the majority. So, but you know, I'm always trying to provide an off-ramp for these people to come to their senses and not be so crazy about what they're doing. So the Works is a voice for that. And I continue to reach out to all sides, because I believe I get to have my vote and I have an opinion, but we have got to come together as a community to figure out, because in the end, you as a citizen cannot protect your environment. That requires the government. There's no ifs, ands, or about it. You know, I can recycle, but I can't decide if they're going to put, you know, a sewer underneath the creek. So there you have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Christine, thank you. And Tim and Bradford and all the people who volunteer for this. I'm so appreciative that you provide this space.
Thanks.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's really terrific, and I'd just like to applaud as well and say, I know there's you know, good collaborations going on with you and Holly and so forth, but I think this kind of higher level opportunity, Christine, that you're providing for people to connect is wonderful. It's with giving so much depth on the technical side, but also enabling us to talk about some of these other issues as well.
Thank you. That's meaningful to hear. That's important to me. So, and I'm just really grateful for the sort of the caliber of you guys showing up and having these discussions. I mean, it's all of us. And so I just am grateful that you're part of it. So thanks for showing up.
And is the mapping exercise of, there's the Network Weavers Facebook group map, which I think I think you're involved with, and which I'm kind of on. But I'm going to be interested in how that goes and whether people on that map find that they can actually collaborate with each other well. They should be able to, but will that actually work?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so that was an experiment for, you know, the master mappers, which Drew is part of and Maya's part of, and a few other people. And yeah, I mean, I think that there's still a level of building a map, and, you know, that's not them coming and, or not. And so, and it's partly about, you know, ownership and who's driving it. And so there's still a lot of, it's an experiment. Yeah. I'd like your opinions. I have been thinking about and spoken with a few people about doing yet another map, but this map being for the people who are learning social system mapping, and that I would curate it. It would be totally specifically exactly focused on social system mapping. And I mean, I think the broader the community that you're mapping, I mean, just the less there's, I mean, there's pockets of coherence, but the whole, like, I think that smaller, more focused maps are, I mean, to me, they're not very satisfying because I see big systems and I see lots of, so to me, it's like, oh, I want, 5,000 people in there. We can't do that technically, but I want the big ones because then I can dig deeper. But what I'm discovering is that for most people, that's too intimidating and they can't even begin to think about it. But a smaller map that's more focused, like your Wimberley Valley map is beautiful because it's focused on a place. It's got very specific activities. It's not like, oh, I'm working on education or I'm working on health. Well, that's a monster-sized topic. And, there's just no way that I could go through 5,000 people who are interested in health and not discover the ones that are interested in the piece that I'm interested in, right? So being able to really focus the topics, like sort of requires a smaller group or a more targeted group. So my thinking is with a social system map that we've got an opportunity to be very specific and targeted. And then we also have an opportunity for, as I've been mapping, I map for clients. I've never made a map. Well, the first one was for myself. It was just a test beta, but I have not made a map, not for myself, but for the thing that I'm focused on. I'm always, the consultant, and I have all these ideas. It's like, I want to try this. I would like to try that. I think this might work. How would that work? I don't know. And I can't do that because if I say them to my clients and my clients say, oh, no, we're not ready for that. Or, oh, no, I don't like that idea or whatever. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Get in a fight with them? No. So I have thought, well, if we had one that's focused on this, that group would actually be interested in the experiments that I want to conduct around mapping because they're mappers. So my question is, that was a long-winded question, but what do you think of that idea? As if I'm still toying with, should I go there or not? Because I know you guys are on a lot of maps already.
I think that would be terrific. And I guess we could address the wider issues as well, but not feel that we've got to have on the map all the people that are doing community development or whatever and so forth. So people looking at it through the lens of system mapping, development, and so on. It raised another issue for me, which is another conversation. Is in the London situation, our brief is to try and do a scalable model. Wow, does that mean doing a bigger and bigger map? Well, from what you're saying, that ain't going to work. But if you have different maps, so if you say, okay, we do a map for the LGBT community, and we'll do a map for the deaf and disabled community, and then we do a map for the environmental people, a lot of the nodes on that map are actually common. So how do you get connections across? How do you join up the maps? Another question.
Well, so we do have, I don't think anybody has used it yet because I don't think anybody's been to the point where they've had a need for it, but we actually have a function in sumApp where as long as, like if you use multiple connection questions, we have this thing called, in me and Tim's language, called just the strength of connection, the ranking question. If the first question is a basic, like, ranking of strength of connection, and then you have other questions that are more specific and deeper. Anyway, we have a function where you can take the connections from one project and import them into another project. So sumApp will find the people who are in both projects. So it won't map connections of people that aren't in, it won't move connections that are irrelevant to the receiving project, but it will find all the connections that that exist in this map and the people that exist in that map and move them over. And it will enable you to map over. So in some instances, maybe people have 3, ranking questions, like, I know them, we have had generative interactions, or we collaborate, say that's a 3, and then you might have a 4, like, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4 scale. You can actually map them over and say, okay, well, this is closest to that, that's closest to that, that's closest to that, and, put these two together, whatever. Anyway, it has that functionality to map over the connections and then import them from one map to the other. It makes sure it uses the most recent version of the connection. So if they've updated in this map, but not in that map. So it's all very technical and complicated to talk about, but that's a step in that direction of then you could have a master list. You could have small projects. They could feed into a master project. And then that project, it won't do the surveys because every small group is going to have different surveys, and we're just not able to manage that degree of cans of worms. But you could at least have those linkages between the different populations, and so somebody could have that big master map and look at the linkages. I have to think about that some more. But anyway, that's a start. So what I'm trying to say is a long-winded, overly technical way of saying that question is a question that I've been carrying since we started this, because I could see, it's like, yes, I know people are going to want to go there. I know this is going to be an issue. I know they're going to want us to fix it. I know we need to find a solution. And so that's in the back. I mean, that's always percolating. How are we going to accomplish all of these things for you guys? Because the small maps are what are profound and meaningful. And at the same time, we do want to see the larger network of networks. We want to be able to start to see who's got those connections across, who are bridging in the broader scope.
Well, that's really useful. Maybe I can come back to you on that one, Christine. That would be really good, because, how do we do stuff that we've got the potential for scaling something in London, but I'm trying to say to other people in the project, think about those things now. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Not just think you can ad hoc them later on, maybe.
Well, and plus that data that says really 150 people is as big a network as people can really dive in and belong.
Sure.
So I've kind of put 150 as our goal, and then we'd figure out sub-communities or something, because that number just makes sense to me, especially, we've got a village of 3,000 people, but the valley is 12,000. But I think 150 may be about as big as people can try and actually get to know people. I don't know. But we are thinking about that too. What would be the magic number where we would reshuffle the interest and maybe change the, groupings?
Yeah. Another just a technical thing to throw out there, because you, Stephanie, mentioned mapping people and organizations. So we're working right now on a feature where you could have a project as well as a organization project, as well as what we're calling a linkage project. And the linkage project would be asking the people, what are your relationships to the your personal relationships to the organizations? So there could be multiple kinds of relationships to, like, I worship there, I'm a minister there, I donate, I hate that place, whatever it is. I'm the founder, I'm on the board, I get funding, I volunteer. So we're like right now, it's in development, and Tim and I are testing daily and, trying to make sure it works. And so that'll be rolled out within the next month or two.
It came up as a question on ours, because we just had a general question that says, what organizations in the community are you affiliated with? And people go, you mean on the board? You mean I give them money? And I'm just like, any way you think about it, if you feel affiliated with them, right?
Yeah. But then the problem there is that if you want to search on that, like if they each input the organization with like some with the, with an acronym, some with a shortened, tech rather than technology, they can put one organization's name in there 10 different ways, in which case you can't really cluster on it. It's not standardized.
We have a list of organizations, so they
select,
check, and people feel very strong about their loyalty. So we've had to add some other groups that people wanted listed, and we've made sure to include left wing and right wing both. So I mean, it's an exercise.
Yeah. Well, so this new feature you might find it useful. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go, but I so appreciate meeting you, David, and always appreciate you, Christine and Bradford. And
yeah.
So good luck, and we'll try and keep Donald Trump in check, and you have good luck with Boris Johnson.
Okay. That was wonderful. And thanks again, Christine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah.